Hi, I'm Mark McKillier with liveanabolic.com, and if you're over 60 and want to get back into shape, then I have 4 great tips for you. All right, guys, we're not young whippersnappers anymore. We got to do things differently than when we were in our 20s and 30s when it comes to fitness. Now, tip number 1 is really straightforward, guys, and it's probably one of the easiest things that you can implement in your life, and that is you have to get plenty of sleep. Now, why is that so important? Well, guys, we don't heal as fast as we did when we were younger, right? I mean, even when we work out, and we're not even injured really, in reality, you are injuring your muscles when you lift weights or when you do strenuous cardio. You're causing microscopic tears in those muscle fibers. So that muscle needs to heal. And guess what? Most healing occurs when we're sleeping. So guys, it takes longer, unfortunately, than it did when we were young, but you gotta get plenty of sleep to give your body time to recuperate and rebuild all those damaged muscle fibers. And another thing about sleep, it reduces stress. Now, why is that important? Well, guys, if we have a lot of stress in our lives, that causes our body to increase a hormone called cortisol. So what's the big deal with that? All right, guys, well, the more cortisol you produce, the less testosterone your body can produce. All right, so what's the big deal with that? Well, guys, testosterone is the most critical hormone when it comes to building muscle and losing fat, especially as we get older. And guys, the other bad thing about testosterone, we start producing less and less of it every year as we age. So sleep indirectly increases our testosterone levels because it lowers our cortisol levels. So sleep is really important, guys. Okay, on to tip number 2. This is something I like to call metabolic strength training. So what does that mean? Well, guys, it's just a form of strength training where we attempt to minimize the amount of rest time in between every exercise. And why is that important? Well, guess what? That keeps your heart rate up, keeps you breathing hard, it burns more calories while you're working out because it has significantly increased the intensity of the workout, right? So we're not just lifting some weights and then resting for 2 or 3 minutes and then doing another exercise, right? So we're going from set to set to set really quickly with minimal rest, and then we're going from exercise to exercise also with minimal rest. So why does this, what does this do for us? Why is this so important? Well, guys, there's a lot of studies out there that say that when you do this type of strength training, it creates something called EPOC, E-P-O-C. All right, so what does that stand for? That stands for excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. Well, real technical way of saying basically, it just boosts your metabolism. So not only are we burning a lot more calories during the strength training because we're minimizing our rest, but we've put so much extra stress on our bodies during this short workout period that it takes a long time for your body's metabolism that's way up here during the workout to get back down to its normal resting rate. And these studies say that depending on how intense and how long the workout is, your metabolism can stay elevated for hours and hours and hours, even up to 36 hours. So that's important because when your metabolism is higher, you're just burning more calories. So doing this kind of resistance training, this metabolic resistance training, actually increases your caloric burn for long after you've stopped working out. And the other thing is, guys, you don't have to go to the gym and lift a bunch of heavy weights to do metabolic resistance training. It's not that complicated. You can do this in the comfort of your own home with just a few pair of dumbbells and some resistance bands. It's really straightforward. Now, the other great thing about this type of workout method is that it actually increases a lot of our hormones, a lot of our growth hormones. And why do we care about that? Well, guess what? Testosterone, like I just mentioned, is one of these growth hormones. So these high intensity workouts where we keep the rest to a minimum actually increases our growth hormones. Another great way to get back into shape as we get older. Okay, tip number 3, and that deals with how we think about doing cardio exercise. Now, right now I know a lot of you guys are probably doing jogging, or maybe you're on a bike, stationary, maybe out around the neighborhood, and you're kind of doing this slow, steady state cardio. And that's just aerobic exercise, guys. So I want you to start doing something different, all right? I want you to take that cardio and make it anabolic. Now, so how do we do that? Well, basically, you're gonna compress these long, slow, boring cardio sessions into real short, intense bursts of energy, all right? A lot of times you'll hear me call this metabolic sprinting or anabolic sprinting. Sometimes I refer to it as HIIT, which is high intensity interval training. Doesn't matter, it's all the same type of technique, guys. And what you want to do is really push up the intensity for short periods of time, and then do that just 2 or 3 times throughout the week. Well, guess what? Think how much more time efficient that is. You're not going to waste hours and hours and hours throughout the week jogging or biking. You know, we're just talking about short little 15-minute intense burst of anabolic cardio throughout the week. And then the other thing, that when you do it this way, it actually raises your metabolic rate for hours and hours long after you've quit exercising. Whereas when you stop jogging right now, guess what? Your metabolic rate comes back down to its normal resting rate real quickly. So we want to keep our metabolism real high for as long as possible, because guess what? It burns a lot more calories. Okay guys, final tip number 4, and guess what? It deals with nutrition. You knew that was coming, right? All right, I want to talk about intermittent fasting combined with carb cycling. So, real quickly, intermittent fasting is basically just a technique in which you don't eat any food for a certain period of time, and then you eat all your normal meals in a relatively narrow time window. So, a couple different ways that are real popular, guys. The 16-8 method is where you don't eat anything for 16 hours out of the day. And then you eat all your normal meals just in a little short 8-hour window. And most people make that from, say, 12 o'clock noon till 8 p.m. at night, eat all their meals, and then nothing from 8 p.m. at night until noon the next day. Do that about 5, 6, maybe even 7 days a week if you really like it. That's a great way to do intermittent fasting. And then another real popular technique is called the 24-2 method. And that's where you don't eat anything, nothing, for 24 hours. All right, now that's probably gonna be harder for most of you guys, but give it a try. And then the 2 means you only need to do it 2 days a week. So no fasting 5 days a week, and then 24 hours of fasting 2 days a week, but don't make them back-to-back days. You know, skip a couple of days in between those fasting periods. And then the other thing, guys, is if you combine intermittent fasting with carb cycling, you're gonna get even better results. So carb cycling is just a method by which you restrict your carbohydrate intake on days when you're not doing a lot of exercise. So if you're not working out that day, or you're not doing any anabolic cardio, okay, then try to take in far fewer carbs that day, and then reserve those good tasting carbs for those days where you're actually exercising much harder with much more intensity. And I think you're gonna get much better results when you combine those 2 different techniques. All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed these 4 tips. And as usual, I want you guys to subscribe to the channel. Be sure and share this video with some of the other guys out there that you think might benefit it. And then post some comments below and hit that little thumbs up button. Give me a like. And as always, guys, stick with it and never give up on yourself.